No amnesty. That's the focus of tonight's angle. All right, how convenient. Now that we see just how wrong the COVID experts were on everything from school shutdowns to vax mandates, those same experts are telling us that it's just time to move on.
Move on! Nothing to see here! Please disperse! Nothing to see here, please!
Writing in The Atlantic, Brown University economist Emily Oster argues that we need to let bygones be bygones on the COVID debate and not relitigate the past. We have to put these fights aside and declare a pandemic amnesty, forgiving the hard calls that people had no choice but to make with imperfect knowledge. L.A. County closed its beaches in the summer of 2020. Now, ex post facto, this makes no sense, but we need to learn from our mistakes and then let them go. Nice try, but no way. First off, there is little sign that those responsible for the disastrous decisions actually learned much, if anything at all. Where were the mea culpas from the shutdown fanatics like Anthony Fauci and Deborah Birx? First, they gave horrendous advice to Donald Trump that led to his decision to shut down the entire country. This never should have happened. It did enormous damage to our children, our economy, our constitutional rights, and the American psyche that we're still seeing play out today. Almost everything they advocated, other than maybe washing your hands and covering your face when you sneeze, was wrong. Like this.
If you're never within 6 feet of any single individual, then you've controlled the virus.
We're asking the young people to help us with this mitigation strategy by staying out of the bars, staying out of the restaurants, really trying to distance yourself. Don't get the attitude, well, I'm young, I'm invulnerable.
Do you realize that social distancing was never grounded in science? Never. It was all made up.
Single costliest recommendation that CDC made, that you had to maintain 6 feet of distance, that wasn't based on good judgment and good science.
They were wrong about the vaccines stopping transmission, too.
Our data from the CDC today suggests, that vaccinated people do not carry the virus, don't get sick.
Whoops, false. Most Americans thought the vaccine would stop you from getting COVID altogether. Well, of course, we know that was wrong. You also could transmit the virus if you had the vaccine. The CDC Director Walensky has been vaxxed and boosted, I think, a total of, 5 times? And she has COVID again. They were wrong to dismiss natural immunity as well. It turns out acquired immunity through previous infection does, in fact, provide durable immunity from future infection, and it certainly lessens your symptoms if you get it again. And do you remember what CNN's Dr. Sanjay Gupta and the rest of the medical cartel had Americans doing?
But we do know the virus can live on surfaces, for example, steel and plastic, for up to 3 days. I've used a little glitter here for my kids to show you what the virus might be like. I'm just going to clean all the virus off here. Don't need to do too much. It's a pretty sensitive virus. You don't need to use any kind of specific wipe either. Any household cleaner will do.
Okay, I forgot that one. A few weeks later, CNN had to explain that, no, you don't actually need to wipe down your box of spaghetti or leave your Amazon packages in the garage. How embarrassing. But these people were drunk on their own power. Anthony Fauci even wanted to control your holiday plans.
If you get vaccinated and your family's vaccinated, you can feel good about enjoying a typical Thanksgiving, Christmas with your family and close friends.
You've got to be careful when you go into large public indoor spaces where there are a lot of people there, and that's the reason why you should be wearing a mask under those circumstances. I mean, obvious, the N95 is the best, but a regular surgical mask as well as a cloth mask is fine.
Wait a second. It's fine? Is he talking about those filthy masks hanging on everyone's rearview mirrors? The masks that they grabbed before they dashed into a store? Perhaps the worst part of all of this was the vicious campaign to smear and deplatform anyone who questioned their pronouncements, including world-renowned doctors and researchers. Remember the Great Barrington Declaration? From our top academic institutions, they even blacklisted people. These people have been threatened and excommunicated by medical associations and, of course, social media platforms. And despite how wrong the so-called experts were on a myriad issues, the retribution against dissident doctors continues to this day in the name of protecting public health and combating the spread of dangerous disinformation. How ironic, since they're the worst purveyors of it of all. Famed cardiologist and member of my medicine cabinet, Peter McCullough, could even lose his board certification for what he said over the last 2+ years. He told MedPage that he's appealing the recommendation by the American Board of Internal Medicine, and he's persecuted for stating the truth that the government was playing with math on the virus's true lethality. That was another issue of his. Well, now we see that he and others who spoke about the lethality of the virus were right. A new analysis of COVID deaths shows that early on, before vaccines were available, the infection fatality rate for people younger than the age of 70 was below 1%. And for those under the age of 19, it was 0.0003%. Now, given the analysis we just read, it's less lethal than the flu to a majority of the population. That is stunning. So-called public health officials duped America. As the CEO of Pfizer, of course, he became a multi-billionaire. Governors who made the right calls, like Ron DeSantis, Brian Kemp in Georgia, Kristi Noem in South Dakota, were made out to be pariahs by the media medical cartel. Meanwhile, the real data now shows that the anti-lockdown governors were right, and the governors of states like New Jersey, New York, California, Illinois were wrong. Their people knew it, and many of them fled, never to return to those states. There have to be ramifications for the faulty decisions and the mistakes that were made. Otherwise, they'll just do the same power grabs the next time they announce a crisis. I don't know, maybe the next crisis won't be a pandemic. It'll be a climate crisis or a racism crisis. But those same types of experts will feel free to issue unconstitutional mandates and extend emergency powers for as long as they can get away with it.
We need to sustain our investment in COVID. So we still have work to do that. It's going to require ongoing investment from Congress, ongoing investment in our country so that we can continue to make sure everybody in our country has the protection that they need from COVID-19.
How do we get protected from you? It's not enough to say we did the best we could or we tried our best. It's complex. We didn't know all the facts. In the real world, when people make mistakes, there are consequences. When companies make big mistakes, the company changes leadership or goes out of business. Heck, when a football coach keeps losing game after game, he usually gets fired. The public health officials who got COVID wrong, the governors who got it wrong, the senators who refused to speak up for children locked out of schools, they all need to be removed from positions of any authority. They cannot be trusted again with power, period. None of them have admitted they were wrong or shown true repentance. They certainly haven't recommended restitution for those who were materially harmed, including needless loss of life. They were harmed by the mistakes and the knowing falsehoods. None of them have urged that legal protections actually be put in place to prevent these types of abuses from ever happening again. And this is something that Republicans, when they win the majority again, will have to insist upon. The angle isn't hoping for some symbolic impeachment drama playing out day after day. What we do need, though, is real oversight with professional investigations led by outside experts and backed by the power of the congressional purse. This is why Democrats are so frantic about Trump's pledge to reform the civil service. Because everything they do within the civil service is designed to insulate themselves by any meaningful scrutiny. How dare you question America's doctor, Anthony Fauci? He's been a loyal civil servant for over 40 years. And one of the main reasons that we have a growing populist movement in the United States is that for 2 decades, the American establishment failed to police itself and correct its mistakes. But going forward, this must change. And a reckoning on the disastrous results of our COVID policies, it's a good place to start. No amnesty. And that's the angle.